You are not stuck because you lack intelligence. You are stuck because of it. Intelligence builds maps, scenarios, futures. It anticipates risk, organizes explanations, promises control. And while you analyze, life moves. The problem is not thinking. It is using thought as a condition for living. Smart people confuse clarity with permission. They wait for understanding to authorize action. Life does not ask for meaning. It responds to movement. When intelligence is not subordinated to presence, it becomes the most sophisticated form of the false self. It protects you from mistakes and removes you from experience. That is why you feel potential, but never cross the line. Capacity without reality. Vision without a body. The way out is not to think less. It is to stop obeying the mind. Simple. Imperfect. Present action breaks the spell. Movement restores truth to thought. While you try to understand life, it passes straight through you. Want to see exactly where you get stuck? Watch what happens in your body before you think. Your mind is fast. Too fast. It anticipates before the body can feel. When an opportunity for action appears, the system reroutes. Instead of dropping into the body, decision, movement, risk. It shoots straight into thought. Thought creates scenarios. Scenarios create control. Control creates delay. That is the moment the false self takes over. It uses intelligence as a shield, not to evolve, but to avoid exposure, mistakes, and loss of image. The body wants to act. The mind wants guarantees. And while they negotiate, nothing happens. Inside, tension accumulates. Energy with no exit. You feel capable, but heavy. Clear, but stagnant. Here is the turning point. The key is not to understand more. It is to descend from the head into the body. Minimal action. Present. Without mental authorization. When the body moves, the mind reorganizes. When the mind leads alone, life freezes. Intelligence was made to serve movement, not to replace it. When did your virtue start protecting you? Be honest before you answer. Yes, it happens more often than you admit. Every virtue, when not carried by presence, turns into a golden cage. Intelligence was meant to clarify the path. At some point, it began to rule it. What was discernment became caution. What was depth became delay. What was virtue became identity. This is where the false self takes control. It does not invent flaws. It hijacks qualities. It says, "That's just who I am," when it really means, "Don't expose me." Virtue stops being a tool and becomes justification. You do not act because it's not the right time. You do not choose because it's too complex. You do not commit because you see too much. That is not maturity. It is refined fear. Notice the criterion. Living virtue liberates, crystallized virtue imprisons. When a quality becomes who you are, it stops serving truth and starts serving protection. The antidote is not abandoning virtue. It is crossing through it. Virtue is only virtue when it passes through the body, through risk, through now. Otherwise, it becomes a prison too intelligent to look like a prison. What does this actually give you? What are you trying to preserve? It protects, not your life, your image. This mechanism does not exist to save you. It exists to prevent rupture, to avoid mistakes, to avoid exposure, to avoid the moment you stop being the intelligent one and become simply human. The false self wears virtue as armor. It turns intelligence into control, clarity into distance, discernment into non-choice. Inside, it sounds elegant. I see more. I understand more. I don't rush. The cost is silent. You do not fall, and you do not live. Everything becomes stable. No visible failure, no real commitment, no crossing. This structure delays the moment. Life demands body, mistake, consequence, and truth. Meanwhile, you observe your own existence. Safe, coherent, still. Its function is to keep the false self intact, even if the cost is movement, encounter, and now. When this becomes clear, there is no middle ground. Either you choose protection, or you accept living without guarantees. That is the point, where virtue returns as strength instead of a cage. Is this balance or well-justified immobility? Answer without explaining yourself. Yes, it is immobility with a polished internal reputation. On the outside, balance. On the inside, suspended movement. The false self calls it center. The body feels containment. Real balance is not static. It adjusts while moving. It requires microfalls, constant correction, ongoing risk. Immobility requires only control. When you stop falling, you stop learning. Intelligence sustains this with an elegant script. It's not the right time. I'm aligning things. I prefer to observe. Observation without crossing through is avoidance. The now asks for imperfect action. False balance asks for image maintenance. That is why there is silence, but no pulse. The body knows. It feels what is being held back. Living balance oscillates. Immobility prides itself on not trembling. When you confuse the two, you call a prison stability. and fear wisdom. The question that dismantles everything is simple. Is this keeping you present or merely intact? Presence moves. What does not move is not in balance. It is contained. What if this isn't wisdom, but anesthesia dressed well? Have the courage to strip the veneer away. Remove the noble polish, and what appears is not balance. It is anesthesia, not calm, numbness, not center, containment, not peace, avoidance of feeling. Intelligence has become a sedative. It explains before anything can pass through, names before it can hurt, understands before it reaches the body. This dulls the impact of life, and with the impact, truth disappears. You don't suffer much, but you don't vibrate, you don't fall, but you don't advance. Anesthesia is elegant, silent, unnoticed. It presents itself as maturity. Look at the effect: organized days, domesticated emotions, decisions endlessly postponed, everything functioning without a pulse. Life demands sensory risk, felt error, direct contact. When you feel very little, that is not balance. It is a system that learned not to be crossed through. The final cut is simple. The opposite of anesthesia is not chaos. It is presence. Presence hurts sometimes, but it gives you back the body, movement, and now, where there is no risk of feeling, there is only sophisticated survival. Want to see this mechanism working in real time? Watch the next impulse before you explain it. Something simple appears, an impulse to speak, to decide, to move. Before the body responds, the mind intervenes. Is this the right moment? What if I regret it? What's the best way? The body withdraws. Energy rises to the head. The mind offers a cleaner version. I'll align things better. When it's clearer, I'll act. Right now isn't strategic. Relief appears. Tension drops. That is the anesthesia working. Nothing went wrong. But nothing happened. The impulse cools. Minutes later, hours later, days later, and you call this maturity. It isn't. It is containment. The script is always the same. Impulse, analysis, control, delay, relief, stagnation. The more intelligent you are, the more convincing this cycle sounds. That is why it is dangerous. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't fail. It doesn't explode. It keeps you intact, while life passes beside you. When you act before explanation, the cycle breaks, and then it becomes impossible to lie. It was never balance. It was anesthesia, precisely executed. What do you actually gain by keeping this? Be brutally honest. The hidden gain is simple. Not dying symbolically. Not losing position. Not losing identity. Not losing the inner seat of the one who knows. This mechanism delivers silent rewards. First, image control. As long as you don't act, you don't fail. As long as you don't fail, you remain intact. You stay the lucid one, the deep one, the conscious one. Second, superiority without risk. You observe. You analyze. You understand. You don't expose yourself. You get the feeling of being above the game, without ever having to play it. Third, immediate relief. Each delay relaxes the body. Anxiety drops. The relief is addictive. The system learns fast thinking equals safety. Acting equals threat. From there, intelligence stops serving truth and starts serving the self-preservation of the false self. The cost is invisible. That's why it's tolerable. Life not lived. Potential not embodied. Presence diluted. You gain psychological stability and lose reality. That is the silent contract, protection now, in exchange for vitality later. As long as the hidden gain is unseen, the mechanism looks like virtue. Once it is seen, it loses power. Because it becomes clear, you are not protecting yourself from life. You are postponing the encounter with it. Where exactly does logic stop working? And what is it trying to preserve? Logic stops the moment. It demands guarantees in order to exist. It starts from a false premise. If I understand enough, I won't get hurt. That never holds. Life does not respond to clarity. It responds to presence in motion. The limit of logic shows up in fractures. First, time. Logic lives in the future. The body lives now. When certainty arrives, the moment is already gone. Second, experience. Understanding does not replace crossing. No map creates balance without falling. Logic names the terrain only after someone has stepped on it. Third, identity. Logic preserves who you think you are. Reality requires that this someone collapse and reorganize. Where logic asks for preservation, life demands transformation. The limit is simple. When logic becomes a condition for action, it stops serving truth and starts serving fear. From there, it doesn't err. It avoids. Excellent for distance, useless for living. When you ask logic for what only the body can answer, the system freezes. The final cut, logic works up to the point where you stop observing and accept being crossed. It doesn't fail by defect. It fails because it was never meant to go that far. Who do you stop being if this resolves?